Was Columbine the start of what was supposed to be the end of bullying? There's been mass shootings since the time of private citizens being able to hold and own firearms in their own hand. But there's no doubt that it's becoming a monthly, a weekly, a day-by-day event in the United States alone, to where most of the mass shootings, they don't even get national attention because they're so high in numbers, and some of them, they're just not interesting to the media. If there's no mystery in the villain, then you never hear about it. It's just the fact that a person took a weapon and used it on multiple people to end their life, and usually before they take their own. It's sad that we see this in our own race as humans on Earth, that someone can get to a point to where this seems appealing to them. Where Dylan and Eric bullied so much to where they started an uprising of kids that followed into the next generation. Columbine was by no means the first school shooting. It was just the first to inspire other kids from the message Dylan and Eric leave behind. They felt out of touch, not loved, bullied beyond belief, and told something they were not over and over again, where they lose all sympathy and love for friends, family, life, and the gentleness of a hug. There's no doubt that Dylan and Eric were consumed with planning and setting out their vengeance with taking life in a horrific way, so much so that there was no turning back to where they would betray the other one if they tried. As a parent, it's a terrifying thought that you could be having your child attend school to be safe and learn, and they lose their life because you sent them to this place. Or, the other hand, you sent them to this place where they were bullied and ridiculed, to where they were forced to make a decision, an awful decision, to where it intrigued them and brought them joy of harming others. It must have been such a lonely feeling for Dylan and Eric to be enjoying the hatred they felt towards people. The plan they came up with to open fire on their school, to where they were the only two that knew this secret for months. Two kids beat down so much that this was their rational thinking on how to express their anger. When Eric went to Columbine on April 20th, 1999, he went there to murder people and hear them scream. But Dylan was there because he knew his life was going to end that day. This is the heartbreaking story of the last moments of Dylan and Eric, where they will start to write a story that's still being written today. One of the biggest and rare elements we see with Columbine, still to this day, is that Dylan and Eric did this together as friends. It wasn't just some one person scheming and contemplating going back and forth of should they or should they not. It was two friends that at some point they agreed together to do this. They had planned the attack for a long time, and along with that, when you've lost all care for your own life, it's obvious you don't care about anybody else's as well. Almost a year before Dylan and Eric walked into Columbine on April 20th, 1999, the day of Hitler's birthday, and the Oklahoma City bombing, which was no coincidence for Dylan and Eric. But that year before, they started to journal in different ways, each of them showing the different sides of themselves in their writings. But the two of them combined set their issues on the world together. When we look at Eric's journal writings, they seem to be the writings from a madman. He writes of tearing people apart, bombing his hometown, right in front of his face as he laughs, enjoying every moment of it, even saying the time is coming to act it out, waiting on the perfect spot. You see that Eric is cruel and enjoys the suffering of others. There's no doubt that he's the leader when it comes to him and Dylan's relationship, making the plans and the rules. Eric is known as a neighborhood kid you don't want around your child. He's obsessed with death and what it could feel like to take a life. When he finds people that have been in war, he's eager to ask them about what they've seen and the feeling of taking someone's life. Eric even builds a website for all of his hatred and the people he despises, expressing who he plans to harm and who's at the top of his list. Even writing people's names out on his website, Dylan is completely the opposite hand of Eric. Dylan is mostly known as the sweet one to the adults around the friends group and the more social one. Even to this day, many people say he was sweet and caring and struggled greatly from thoughts of harming himself. The part of the story that is still alive and thriving today is that there's still sadly inspiring kids that are beat down, depressed, and building large amounts of anger towards the world, where everyone's their enemy, obsessing over violence. There's dark places on the web that you can find Dylan and Eric where they look like heroes to the majority of kids that are attracted to what they've done in a positive way. The majority of kids that have done attacks on their own schools have a very high number, more than not, have a history with studying Columbine and Dylan and Eric as heroes, even buying the same weapons, making the same bombs, and wearing the same clothes as Dylan and Eric. The story of Dylan and Eric has even reached as far as Russia. Just a few years back, when a man entered a school and took lives, Dylan and Eric just didn't decide one day to walk into their school and do this. There was extreme planning, building, financing, drawing maps, and they hit it all. Dylan and Eric had a friends group that called themselves the Trenchcoat Mafia, just a group of friends that in the end were all thought to be just like Dylan and Eric. But when you dig into the background of the Trenchcoat Mafia, it's been highly misunderstood. The group were just friends, enjoying the same interests, that were just kids in the background, not making a lot of noise. And towards the end, Dylan and Eric were the only ones wearing trench coats. The main focus of the group was nothing more than kids that enjoyed video games, computers, Dungeons and Dragons, and sharing the same anxieties of school, teenage angst, and talking about their future, and were picked on and made fun of by the jocks in school and people that disassociated themselves from them. They weren't a group of killer kids. One of the biggest parts of Dylan and Eric's interests with their friends was computers, building them and building websites. Also, sharing a love of video games, and Dylan and Eric's most favorite one, Doom. Dylan and Eric make mention of this game often in their journals and just in conversations with each other, even saying in a video close to the events on April 20th, their big plan is going to be just like Doom. Dylan and Eric's close friends that are part of the group swear that they knew nothing of the attacks, but they do admit to other things and help authorities understand more of what happened with the background of the situation. They do say there's many occasions, especially with Eric, when they're sitting in the bleachers at school or looking out a window, that Eric will make references of saying how funny it would be to just start opening up fire on everyone right there, and simply laughing it off. They know that Dylan and Eric have weapons, and even on one occasion, Eric will bring a pipe bomb to work to show off to his friends, where they immediately become concerned and tell Eric to go home with it. One big puzzle clue that police were searching for is how Dylan and Eric came into contact with so much gunpowder. A year before Columbine, Dylan and Eric, along with a few friends, were helping run a fireworks stand. But when the fireworks stand was done and moving on, and all the young men helped break it down, there was boxes upon boxes left over, to where the owner of it told all the boys, "Take what you want." Dylan and Eric took as many boxes they could fit into their cars as possible. From this point, Dylan and Eric are learning how to make bombs. Even so, not long after, setting their first bomb off in the mountains, where they came back telling friends they made a huge crater on top of the mountain. But all the while, Dylan and Eric are still attending school and treating their future like it's happening, even visiting colleges they are saying of signing up for. But as the last months come to, and Dylan and Eric truly make their mind up about what they're going to do, they start to make more videos of acting out weird scenes where they confront bullies dressing in similar clothes on the day they'll attack their school. Even 3 days before the attack, Dylan is spending the day getting ready for prom, seeming as though his world is normal, taking pictures with his parents, taking pictures with his date. Dylan went to prom by limo with 12 other friends. It's even said that while Dylan was in the limo, he was talking about attending college in Arizona with his friends, detailed and excited about what was coming for his future. Even so, that Dylan's parents put down a down payment on his college tuition. He was planning to attend University of Arizona, where he was going to major in computer science. The family even drove there on March 25th to look at Dylan's room. It was a happy time for the family. But on that day, April 20th, 1999, Dylan and Eric made the last decision to go through with their plan. It didn't go the way they thought, thankfully. Dylan and Eric were inspired by the Oklahoma bombing, the devastation it had, and the effect it had on the country. They were wanting a similar effect to happen at Columbine, which is why they had so many bombs with them when they attacked. When Dylan and Eric started the attack, they weren't just shooting from far away. Most of the victims they walked up to, picked out the person, and then took their life. Dylan and Eric that day became the bullies, picking and choosing, even making small talk with some of the people they knew. A friend of Dylan's, looking out from under his desk, saying, "Hey Dylan, what are you doing?" Dylan looked at his friend smiling and said, "Oh, you know, just killing people." In the end, 188 shots were fired, ending in the library where terrible situations had happened to innocent people. Dylan and Eric took their own lives, with many other classmates, leaving traps still in the school, and even in Dylan's BMW that was sitting in the parking lot, full of explosives, even in the end, trying to harm people. It's a sad situation for everyone. There's no doubt that Dylan and Eric were two intelligent young men, and when you really look at the tapes that they made of themselves, you see that they're just kids, trying to make the other one laugh, trying to fit in with other people. They have shyness, they have anxieties. At one point they had hopes and dreams. They both could have had an amazing life, working with computers, but just somewhere along the way, they believed a lie about themselves and attached themselves to it. They fed it and nurtured it, taking it as far as it would go, to where they made it into a terrible, terrible decision. The big question is, are Dylan and Eric still inspiring the hurt and lost in kids that seek vengeance? The answer is yes, sadly. We may never see the end of Dylan and Eric's message settle in the dust, but the history of Dylan and Eric's Columbine will always be the genesis of school shootings.